Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. John Martin here with me. My name is Rob Dauster, and we are heading to the city where they put chili on their spaghetti. Cincinnati. We're talking about the Bearcats. We're talking about a team that I think has a chance, John, to surprise some people in the Big 12. The Bearcats are coming off of a 22-15 season. They went 7-11 last year in the Big 12. It is year 4 for Wes Miller of Cincinnati. He's yet to make an NCAA tournament. But I do think that there are enough pieces on this roster and more continuity than I think you're going to find in a lot of places, right? Like he brought back, let's just kind of roll through it here. He brought back Day Thomas and Jizzle James in the backcourt, right?
Yep.
You get back Dan Skillings, who to me was one of the more surprising players on this team. Seamus Lukosius is back. Aziz Bandaogo is back. CJ Frederick somehow still has another year of eligibility. You got some pretty good freshmen. Tyler Betsy, a 4-star. Tyler McKinney, a 4-star. You added Dylan Mitchell, who's one of the best athletes in the draft. Connor Hickman, transfer from Bradley, Arrington Page from USC, a little less notable. But I think if you look at this team's top 6, there are a lot of reasons to be excited about what this group can end up being. And I don't think it's crazy to say that there is top 25 upside here and that there is NCAA tournament upside here with the Bearcats.
Yeah, they've done it the right way. In the age of the transfer portal, they have gotten to a point in, with retention with guys in their program and also sort of, being picky and choosy in the portal. They've done it the right way with Dylan Mitchell and just, believing that what they had from a year ago, in the NIT quarterfinals is going to be enough for the additional year of development. So, I mean, I think what Cincinnati is doing is they are definitely putting themselves in prime position to break through. Obviously we got to see it on the court, but I think, if I was a consultant, for college basketball coaches, and they asked me like, what's the best way to do it? I think what Cincinnati is attempting to do here is the formula. It's the recipe. You lean too much in the transfer portal, as we talk about, you're probably going to have issues. But if you do a good enough job with retention, maybe you get a little lucky. Maybe a guy's not quite good enough to go league. Maybe your NIL package is just good enough. You keep them around, and then you just sort of add that piece that maybe gets you over the top, which is what they're hoping they're having in Dylan Mitchell. I think this is the formula, and whether or not it pays off for, Wes Miller, we shall see. But just on paper, this is the right way to go about it for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I love their backcourt. I think that Thomas and Jizzle James and Dan Skillings are better than people realize. And I think there's a lot of potential here for a team where I've always said, and I said it last year when Dylan Mitchell was at Texas, like his best role, the best thing he can be in college is just to embrace being the small ball 5 that is out there to try to like Draymond Green some shit up, right? To go out there and just use the fact that you're the point one of the point one of the 0.1% in terms of athletes, especially at the college level. Block some shots, be switchable, and lean all the way into this idea that you can play a 5 that is going to force teams to have to figure out a way to guard you, right? Because I think there's some rim protection ability there. All that said, I see a lot of potential with the ability that they have in terms of perimeter players. Day
Mhm.
Thomas, Jizzle James, Dan Skillings, even Seamus Lukosius. Like there's a lot of talent there, and I'm excited to see if that ends up being something that comes to fruition this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, you're not in the AAC anymore, Toto.
Mhm.
I mean, it's different. And look, they weren't embarrassing by any means last year. I mean, I think in a transition year, it's going to get clunky. It's going to be clumsy because you go from, you know, eh, there's no more Tulsa and Tulane on your schedule, right? Like
Mhm.
those get replaced, by teams like Kansas and Texas, for example, at least last year. So I think that you have to sort of price that in a little bit with last season. But I think that, yeah, to your point, the backcourt trajectory is pointing up, and now these guys have that year of Big 12 experience. They know exactly what to expect, for 24, 25. I mean, I'd be disappointed, and we'll get to it, but I'd be disappointed if this does not result in a tournament year for Wes Miller and these Bearcats, and obviously that those guards would be a big part of it.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to see what Dan Skillings can end up being this year, right? Like, do we get we spend a lot of time talking about how good um Jizzle James is because he's injured James' son, because his nickname is Jizzle. Like, there's everything about that dude is electric. He's a lot of fun to watch. Day
Yep,
Day Thomas, another guy, cool nickname, exciting player. He had some flashy moments, but to me, Skillings was kind of the guy that was the rock, especially down the stretch of the season. Like, he had 25 against Kansas in the Big 12 quarterfinals. He was, I would argue, one of, if not their best player during that run in the NIT. And it felt like he kind of really came on strong after a good freshman season to have a really good sophomore year. And like, I like those guys where you can kind of see the
absolutely.
trajectory going up. And I think that he's in line for a big season. And I'm just, I maybe it's just the way that I think about basketball, but I'm thinking about lineups where you have 6'6" Dan Skillings out there with 6'8" Seamus Lukosius, with 6'8" Dylan Mitchell, and well, I guess this is where we got to talk about Tyler Betsy. He's also 6'8", and that dude can really shoot that thing, right? He's an
Yep,
athletic four that's going to be able to create some space. There's a lot of creative things that Wes is going to be able to do with this lineup that I think if he decides to have some fun with it, that can create problems for other teams in the conference. There's not a lot of teams. Go through and look at the Big 12 and how many teams are really like trying to go full small ball and playing like that. There's a lot of teams that are looking and saying, I see Hunter Dickinson over there. Like, we're gonna have
yep,
to do something with that big fella.
yep. Got to. But I think your point about Dan Skillings is exactly the right one. I mean, that's a guy who should take a big step this season. And again, how many how many guys in college basketball, are at the same stop, for 3 seasons? And again, I know that they changed leagues, so that probably does help. When you're considering everything, like, oh, I'm going from the AAC to the Big 12 now, but that's the benefit. You stick with your coach, he develops, you go from averaging what 5 as a freshman to 13, lead your team in scoring last season. Like, this is a guy that should average 15, 16 a game next season. So I think that's an advantage that Cincinnati's going to have over a lot of teams. Not every team, but a lot. They're just going to have that continuity factor, that continuity key going for them in a way that other teams will not. And that doesn't mean that they're, going to be unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it will serve them quite well, especially when they get into conference play. Wes Miller's got that trust factor. They've been through it together, and I think that ultimately winds up being a big positive for them as the season goes on. And Skillings is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, and it's also a testament to what happens when you don't decide to start over. And it would have been very easy for him as like a 6'6" dude to go into the portal and probably get some interest somewhere, not maybe the same level, but uh sticking it out, making the
Yep.
leap that he made, as opposed to having to go and start over, I think is a good example of what happens if you kind of ride it out and trust
Yeah.
the staff that you committed to in the first place. All right, the X factor for this group for me is going to be the front court, and it's just plain and simple. I think that when you look at, um, we've talked about their perimeter pieces already enough, right? But they go like 6 or 7 deep, and they got some real players there. Uh, Aziz Bandiogo, I would put Dylan Mitchell in that conversation, probably Arrington Page as well. Um, there's I don't know if I love it, right? I think that there are some question marks. I know that Bandiego has been hyped up to the moon by some of these ESPN NBA draft guys in terms of what he could be, and he didn't exactly live up to it. I know that there were some transfer things going on last year, but whatever. Uh, that to me is going to be the difference maker here. If Dylan Mitchell and Bandiogo and those guys can kind of live up to what their
Yeah.
expectation was when they got to college. I mean, you don't even have to get to Mitchell was a 5-star top five kid. Like, you don't have to get to
Right.
that, but like be a 12 points, 7 rebounds, a couple assists, block and a half, steal and a half guy. Like, I think if you're that, then we're talking about Mitchell as a really impactful player here. Same thing with Bandiogo.
Yeah, it's hard for me to go against you on this one, and I do. It's kind of weird to call a
You always
guy.
try to, and it never works out for you.
I know. I try to be different. I try to be different. I try to ask the audience to think critically, because there could be more than one answer on this. But I think there is one answer on this, and it is Dylan Mitchell, which is weird because this is as you said, a former 5-star prospect, NBA prospect. So can that guy really be a McDonald's All-American? Can he really be an X factor? But I think he is, and I think it's in the context of if he comes in, new change of scenery, new
Mhm.
program. If he comes in and really is that dude, man, I mean, Cincinnati could be really freaking good. I mean, they have all the ingredients that you need. You have experienced guards, you have nice scoring, guys have been in the program, you know,
Continuity, yeah.
like Cincinnati could be one of those sneaky teams. And I'm not talking about sneaky in terms of making the tournament. I'm talking about making a run. Let's see how it looks in terms of guarding. I think that's the part of it that we'll have to find out. But they have so many boxes checked. If Dylan Mitchell comes in and he can be a high level double double type of guy and make that impact defensively, I really do. I think they can make a run.
So what's your expectation for this group? Because I think if you look at it, 2 years ago, 2023, Cincinnati was 23-13, finished 11-7 in the American,
Yep.
didn't make the tournament. This past year, they were 22-15, 7-11 to the Big 12. Big 12's a tough league,
Yep.
made the NIT. Um, and I think if you assume that the growth is there, we're probably looking at a top 30-ish kind of a team, top 35-ish kind of a team on Ken Palm.
Yep.
Um, but when you're at least when I'm looking at teams that have a chance to pull an upset in the tournament, you're looking at teams that can guard. You're looking at teams that are going to have really good guards, and you're looking at teams that may end up having the best player on the floor. And what I will say about Cincinnati is they are going to be able to guard because that's what West Miller teams do, and they're going to have really good guards. I don't know if they'll have
Yep.
the best player on the floor every night, but they're going to have really good guards, and I think that's what you're kind of looking for. So in that Big 12 conference, it's a bear, man. You finish top 8, you make the tournament, and you have a chance to make a run. Like, I think that is a very successful season for Cincinnati and one that West Miller and Bearcat fans should be enthralled with.
This should be a big year. Like this should be a big year for Cincinnati. You're bringing back 70% of your minutes, and those are big minutes, by the way. Those aren't like those little empty vein minutes, like with the third backup. No, these are real minutes that are coming back. You're adding a huge talent in the portal and Dylan Mitchell. You've been kind of knocking on the door. You adjust with the AAC to Big 12 transition, a year ago, and that went about as expected. But with everything that you have working for you, this has to be a tournament team, or it's a big disappointment because the likelihood of this all kind of combining and conspiring to happen at the same time with experience, returners, good talent coming in. It's hard to do, man. It's hard to do on a yearly basis. Look around; it just doesn't happen. So this has to be, Rob, a tournament appearance for West Miller and Cincinnati. It's overdue, and with everything they've got, man, this has to be the year, or it's going to be a disappointment as far as I'm concerned. A pretty
Yeah.
big one.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think about the fact that Wes Miller is in year 14 of his coaching career, and the dude is 42 years old. Like he's been the head coach since he was 28.
Yeah.
It's he's still very young in this process. Off-season grades. I'm going to go with an A minus. Like I think that as much as anything, um, continuity. Our friend Trilly Donovan, what he loves to say is sometimes the best gifts are the ones that you already have. They
Yep.
brought back their 6 of their top 7 guys are going to be returners.
Yep.
The only guy that lost to the portal that I think was a big name was Victor Locken, who ended up going to Clemson.
Right.
And I don't even know, like, if you have two, like, they might have been already stuffed in the front court, and that might have been like, we're going to take Aziz over Victor. I'm just kind of speculating. I don't have any inside info on that. You don't need to aggregate that, Cincinnati fans. But I think I'm going to go with an A minus. I think that continuity is really important. They added some good pieces that fill holes, and they had a couple good freshmen coming in. Like I don't know how much more you could ask.
Yeah, I'll go A. I'll go A. Just yeah, just take the minus out for me. You can keep it. You can have it, man.
Keep the minus. All right. Thank you,
It
sir.
takes work. It takes work to keep players. As any coach who's watching this will know, it's not or fan. It's not something that just happens. Oh, I was a sophomore at Cincinnati last year. I'm going to come back. No, it ain't. It ain't how it works. So it took real work. It took real convincing, and obviously, the NIL piece of it. But you also have put together a program that people are buying on the come, so to speak, right? They see the
Mhm.
potential, they see the building, and you've built that, and that takes a lot of work. So to keep as many guys as they have, like you said, 6 or 7, 70% of the minutes, I think that's an A. It's rare in this day and age, that many quality players coming back to try to crystallize this and turn it into a tournament appearance. So I'm gonna give it an A, man. I think it was a really good offseason for Cincinnati.
Yep, I agree. Listen, John, it's been a pleasure, man. Always great to catch up. We have
Yes, sir. Love
45
it.
of these postseason grades, off-season grade episodes in the YouTube queue. We'll be rolling them out August and September. Make sure you keep it tuned to the Field of 68 YouTube channel to see all of that content.